Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of Depot's Den. I am Evan DePasquale, and let me tell you, if you haven't already been listening to what I've been talking about, it has been a this part of the year is super just slow, and there's not really much going on. And but luckily, with what happened this past, the past couple weeks, I feel like I can be able to, throw out some stuff, talk a little bit with the Sabres. I think that's really what this podcast is about. This one is I'm calling it Win Now and Win in the Future. Now you're thinking, oh, that's a Bills thing. Well, it also is a Sabres thing too. Winning now and winning in the future. And that's what I really am seeing from this Buffalo Sabres team. Now, development camp just wrapped up this on Thursday, and I know I said I would do these podcasts every Friday. I got a little sidetracked, so I made sure to get this done today. So anybody who listens, when they see this, they're like, "Oh, I was expecting to see a podcast on on Friday, and all of a sudden it's Saturday, and you didn't put up a podcast." And I apologize. Um, I put out a poll on my Twitter account at Evan Depot 2 is where you can find me. If you ever want to hear anything about Depot's Den or just any of my sports opinions, if you want like a real question, I put out, what season are you most excited for and why? The Bills season or the Sabres season? I got 20 votes. I was hoping for more. And it was literally a split 50-50. 10 people said Sabres season, the other 10 said Bills season. Now, for me personally, right now, the Sabres season is so much more exciting than the Bills season. And here's why. It's because of the fact that the Sabres are on the rise. This is kind of like what it was like with the Bills in 2019 when they were, you know, you started seeing Josh Allen. He started looking like he was going to be this really good quarterback, and then all of a sudden, you start to see you see that Allen is becoming what eventually would be this all-world quarterback who's on the cover of Madden, and you got John Brown coming in, you got Cole Beasley coming in, and you got a bunch of free agents that were like, yeah, I want to be here. This team is on the rise. Let's go. And that's what we're seeing with the Sabres. I mean, they were 1 point out of making the playoffs. If they had won one more game, they would have been in the postseason, and the Florida Panthers would not have been in the Stanley Cup final because they would have missed. Now, could the Bills have, not the Bills, could the Sabres have done what the Panthers did? Probably not. I don't think they had a goaltender at that point in time where I felt like, oh, he can steal you a series like Sergei Bobrovsky did in the entire playoffs and up until the Stanley Cup final, where it was just, I won't say he played like crap. They just ran into a better team. And the thing about the Stanley Cup is that you not only have to be good, but you also have to have luck go your way. I mean, look at the Sabres when in 2006 they were extremely good, made it to the conference finals, made it to game 7, but so many injuries to their defense core kind of just screwed it all up, and the Sabres lost in game 7. And I still say, in my opinion, they would have won the Stanley Cup. But that's neither here nor there. What I want to talk about is what I've been seeing from the Sabres team that gets me excited about this upcoming season. Like when I saw the schedule, I was like, okay, let's see it's some games that I could go to. Like the game I always try to look for is, are they playing on my birthday? They're not, of course, but they're playing the day after, which is on a Friday night. And I'm going to be like, yes, a Friday night game. It's going to be electric. They're going to be, I think they're playing the Minnesota Wild. November 10th is the game, and November 9th is my birthday, in case you were wondering. But for me, I am super excited about this Sabre season. And I actually got a tweet on this. His Twitter is Bandit Keith. So we'll just call it Keith. It says Sabres might need a few good seasons before seriously pushing for a cup. Bills have been through it, and maybe the principle of what they'll be is with Allen right now. So it looks like they're on the trajectory that the Sabres, not that the Bills are on. Okay, they had a really good year. They made the playoffs, and now it's go time. Now, it's a lot harder to win your division in hockey compared to football, where you have just basically 4 teams in your division, where there's like, I couldn't count how many, 8 maybe? 8 teams? Yeah, 8. 8 teams in your division because there's 32 teams and, 8 in each division, 16 in a conference, da 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 da. You get where I'm coming from. I don't know if the Sabres will ever win. I don't predict them to be the winners of the Atlantic. But what I do predict is I could predict them being a top 3 team in the Atlantic, getting the face. I don't know if they'll be like winning their division where they're going to be playing a wild card team, but I could totally see them being, I don't know, being the 3rd team. I could see Tampa Bay falling off. We've seen them kind of fall off a little bit at the end of last year, and they ended up getting beat by Toronto, and then Toronto ended up almost getting swept, which is hilarious. But that's neither here nor there. The Sabres, when they got to the 13th overall pick, they took Zach Benson, 13th overall. I don't pay much attention to prospects when it comes to hockey, like the WHL, USHL, the U.S. Development Program, stuff like that. I don't really pay much attention to that. SWHL, the Swedish Hockey League. But what I can tell you is that this guy, he was on the same line as Matt Savoy, who was the Sabres' 9th overall pick last year. And eventually, they're both going to be playing in Buffalo. I guarantee you, they're both going to be playing in Buffalo, and they're both going to be on the same line. I would be really shocked to see them move each other. And Savoy, I think it's either Buffalo or it's juniors. And I don't think Savoy is really ready right now to be in the Buffalo lineup. Now there's the injury to Jack Quinn. I'll get that into a bit. I made a little sort of projected lineup for the Sabres on opening night. I'm not too really 100% sure, but I think that this is what could happen. The Sabres are not drafting for, we need this guy to be in the NHL playing for the Sabres right now. This guy is going to be with the organization 3 years down the road. This is not a Jack Eichel, Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, to where as soon as he gets drafted, he'll be ready. Now, Owen Power did end up playing another year at Minnesota. Not Minnesota, Michigan. But he might play in the WHL, maybe play for Rochester. He had 98 points in the WHL with Matt Savoy, and he had more points than Matt Savoy. And a lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh, look at this kid! Look at Matt Savoy! He's so good!" Da 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 da. But not to know about the other picks, but it's also like for Gavin McCarthy, the Buffalo native, Clarence kid, played for the Buffalo Junior Sabres. For him to get drafted, I thought that was really, really cool for just to see him get drafted. And I think that he could be in the Sabres lineup. I don't know, maybe 3 years down the road, something like that, right before the Sabres, when he'll sign with the Sabres, and he'll probably play in Rochester and get bigger. That's the thing. These guys are here when they're 19. They're playing to be more so of a player that's going to be here in the future. They're not here for the now. And that's okay, because the Sabres already have a team that could contend for the playoffs. And if they get hot, maybe even the Stanley Cup. I really think that the Sabres are going to be a playoff team easily. And I don't think it's going to come down to like the last week of the season, like it was this past season, where they were in it. And then the last week of the season, they end up losing to New Jersey, which knocked them out of the playoffs. It's just, for me, it really does seem like this is the team that's going to lead us to calling Buffalo Hockey Heaven again. That was a nickname that we used to have, Hockey Heaven. And for so long, the teams were just so bad that nobody wanted to come here. And now you've got Don Granato, Alex Tuck, Tage Thompson being an incredible athlete. And I think he even got a vote like for the Hart Trophy for MVP, which I wasn't sure if he was going to, because he kind of tapered off at the end of the season because he was injured. A lot of the players on the Sabres were injured, and I think that that's what really kind of dug them in, and that's what's a little unfortunate. But the Sabres, they're going to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Mark my words. If on July 8th, 2023, on Depot's Den, Evan DiPasquale said the Buffalo Sabres are going to be in the Stanley Cup final. Not the Stanley Cup final. Holy cow. The Stanley Cup playoffs. That's what's going to happen because this team is so good. They're too good that I just don't imagine them not being in the playoffs. They're young, they're fast, and you know what? They got players now that they desperately needed. Defense. And that's where I'm going into with free agency in my next point. They signed Eric Johnson to a 1-year deal. I think it was like a little over $3 million. Beautiful move by Kevin Adams, not to really go for the long haul and take someone who is incredibly past their prime and sign them to like 5 years or in an absurd amount of money. This is only a 1-year deal, and I don't really think that this guy could be partnered with Rasmus Dahlin, and not Rasmus Dahlin. Oh my goodness, Owen Power, because Dahlin, you got Samuelsson and Dahlin. You don't break those two apart. Dahlin is the offensive defenseman, and Samuelson's the one that's going to play back and is able to stay up if Dahlin wants to go in the play. And I think that's okay, because that's what Dahlin was made for. He is a goal-scoring defenseman. And now you add Johnson with Owen Power, he brings Stanley Cup leadership to this team that does not have very many people that are like knowledgeable in the postseason. Like Jeff Skinner will play 1,000 NHL games and he has not made it to the postseason. And that's fact. He will play 1,000 games this season and he has never been in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I think that he will be paired with Owen Power on the second line pair. And now you also add Connor Clifton to a 3-year deal. Again, it's not a huge commitment. It is a small commitment. This is what I liked when I heard from Kevin Adams when he was talking with the media, like the day after, on Sunday after free agency, is that he can understand that July 1st, you sign these big contracts to players and you're thinking it's going to make the team better. And then in the long haul, it actually turns out it was a bad signing. I mean, there are free agency in the NHL is not like free agency in football or in basketball. It just isn't. You're more likely to get better players when you draft them and develop them. And that's what the Sabres have really been doing. And that's what I believe a lot of fans have really liked about the Sabres, is that they have been drafting and developing. And so I think Connor Clifton, he'll be like bottom pair defenseman with Lyubushkin or someone along those lines. I can't think off the top of my head who it is that is, you know, I that we just signed him, and like it was an off-season acquisition, but he was more so like a bottom pair defenseman. Now I could see definitely rotating in and out with the Sabres, and this is now you're getting more defensive defensemen, if that makes sense. You're not getting offensive defensemen like they had last year, where it was they were one of the worst in the penalty kill, and that this team is going to be really, really good. And I am not worried at all about. I think that Henry Jokiharju will probably be with Connor Clifton, or he might be a scratch. Who knows? Is Riley Steelman? That's who it was. Riley Steelman. He played a couple games here or there, but for me, I honestly think that Lyubushkin is probably going to be, with Stillman as like a fourth pair defenseman, and then you'll have Jokiharju along with Connor Clifton as the third line defenseman. I mean, he doesn't make lines, like he doesn't number them. Granato doesn't, and that's the thing. The thing I love so much about Don Granato is like he's the opposite of what former coaches used to be. He's like, we know we want to be entertaining. And that's really what has happened here with the Sabres, is that they used to be so boring. I've always said this as a Sabres fan when they were terrible, and I'm not going to say that they're good now, but they're up and coming. I would rather see them lose like 7-5 or 8-4. I know that's ridiculous. Then let's see them lose like 2-1 or 2-0. Because you know what that's telling me? That's telling me they're getting pucks in the net. And not a lot of teams want to watch a boring team like, for example, the New York Islanders, who I think are going to be a team that is going to just falter because their style of hockey is very boring. They were a team that made the playoffs, and I don't think that they're going to be in the playoffs this year. I saw from it was something that was talking about on just who are the three teams that missed the playoffs that are going to make the playoffs, and the three teams that made the playoffs that are going to miss the playoffs. The Sabres were the first team that missed the playoffs that's going to make it. And it was from, I believe, the Daily Faceoff. And I really believe that it is true. Yeah, it's from the Daily Faceoff. Eric, oh, it was like one of their top stories from yesterday, and I think, for me personally, Matt Larkin. Oh my goodness, Matt Larkin, Daily Faceoff. We talked to him on WGR a lot. He's really, really good. For me personally, I just know that his three teams are obviously the Sabres, and it makes sense. And he has the Columbus Blue Jackets, which I don't really know. I don't know. They finished in 30th, but they also have some really good players. And, now you're going to be adding in their head coach, who is just has shown that he can have success. And I would not be surprised, but I don't expect it. I don't really expect them to really make it, going from basically worse than league to making the playoffs. And he also has the Pittsburgh Penguins. Possibly, but I'm still of the mindset of they won't make it because They're trying to keep pushing Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. And it was their first playoff miss in 16 years, and it's going to be a while because they're old, and I just don't think that they can make it. Now, they have his teams that made the playoffs that couldn't miss. His first team's the Florida Panthers. I don't really agree with that because they were a President's Trophy team 2 years ago, so I'm not too concerned about it. Um, you got Matthew Tkachuk, who's a superstar. If he's not ready because he broke his sternum, then I can understand them having a rough start and possibly missing the playoffs. And obviously, Sergei Bobrovsky could be the reason why they miss. The Islanders, yes, this is, like I mentioned, the New York Islanders are the team that I see missing the postseason. And they barely squeak by, and they're not entertaining. And I have not found anything that tells me they're going to be better. And clearly, the Winnipeg Jets, they're looking to, rebuild. They're looking to trade Connor Hellebuck. They trade Pierre-Luc Dubois, Blake Wheeler, and they're just rebuilding. So it makes sense. It don't totally makes sense. But I love that he has the Sabres as the first team that missed the playoffs that's expected to make it next season. And thank you. It was a very, very interesting article, Matt. I do appreciate it. Maybe hopefully if I can reach out to you, come on the den, be on Depot's Den, and we'll talk some hockey. I mean, you definitely know a lot more hockey than me, but you know what? I think that it would be a lot of fun. All right, now I want to get into the Sabres lineup. Jack Quinn, he had a injury on his Achilles and he had surgery. He's expected to miss 4 to 6 months. So his expectation is to probably be back around maybe December or be ready for January at the second half of the season. That was a tough blow because I honestly thought he was going to make the jump that Dylan Cousins made. And that's tough. But you know what? I honestly see him he's going to learn from this. And I think that, what Don Granato was talking about was he's going to learn the game from different parts of the ice while watching. And I think that's a really interesting thought process. And you know what? He's going to be out and the Sabres will be fine. What I have is my lineup for the Sabres for 2023-24. I'm going to start with goaltender. I don't see them making a serious move at goaltender. And that's probably the biggest concern when it comes to the Sabres. Now, can Devin Levi be able to play 50 games or whatever and be the starter and have to play possibly on back-to-back or play, 3 straight games? I mean, he did play a lot at the tail end of the season because they felt like he was the Sabres' best option. He played basically every game since he was able to start playing with Buffalo. He played every game except for the home finale, which happened to be against Ottawa. And, obviously give Craig Anderson a little shout out and, send him off into the sunset and beat his former team. So I see it going to be UPL as the backup and Devin Levi as the starter. Does that concern me? A little bit. But Devin Levi did show me a lot. He played against really good teams that I think there could be a chance that he is going to be the next big thing for the Sabres. He could be the next Ryan Miller. I will not predict that until I really see that he could be the next Ryan Miller. He might be a finalist for the Calder. Now, I don't think he's gonna win the Calder. I just let me tell you, you got a lot of people in line for him to win the Calder. I mean, he could definitely be someone that is up for the Calder Trophy, like a finalist. But I don't know if he'll win it, because it's clearly, I think a lot of people are predicting that, that uh, Connor Bedard is going to go number one. It's almost like clear as day that Connor Bedard is going to go number is going to probably win the Rookie of the Year. But I do see Devin Levi being one of the three finalists for Rookie of the Year. Maybe he'll get a couple. Maybe he'll make it close. I don't know. He'll have to do something incredible to be able to, win it over Connor Bedard, who is expected to be incredible. My top line for forwards: Skinner, Thompson, Tuch. It worked well last year. Why change it? Now, second line, I call this is the kids line. I'm going to keep Peterka, Cousins, and I'm going to put in Kulik. Now, do I think that Lucas Rusak could be that? Yeah, I do, because I've heard that, Paul Hamilton has said that Lucas Rusak has looked bigger, and he's actually, he put up more points in Rochester than Kulik. But I definitely, for me right now, I see Kulik working alongside Dylan Cousins. If it's not Kulik, it's going to be Lucas Rusak. Next line, the third line: Casey Middlestat, Peyton Krebs, Kyle Oposo, or Jordan Greenway. I can honestly see it's probably Greenway that'll be on that line with Middlestat and Krebs. And then my last line is Girgensons, Jost, and Oposo, and or Greenway. That's what I see it. I think they really are trying to make this Jordan Greenway trade really work. So I really think they want to try and give him more minutes. I think that he'll be a good defensive forward, so like a third, fourth liner. But I do think that's really what could happen. Again, and then my defense pair, I didn't really put one, but it's obviously Darlene Samuelson as your top pair, and then you've got Power, and then I'm going to put Eric Johnson as the second pair. Then I'm going to put Yoki Haru with Connor Clifton, and then Labushkin and I'm trying to Riley Stillman as your other pairing, and I'm not really too sure on the defensive core besides the top four, which is going to be Darlene, Samuelson, Power, and Eric Johnson. Those are your four. That's what I think. Lock it in right now. That's going to be the top four for this upcoming Sabres team. And I can't tell you how excited I am. This is again like the Bills: win now and win later, draft, develop, re-sign. And that's what's going to happen with the Buffalo Sabres coming in to the 2023-24 season. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Depot's Den. Be sure to tune in for next week. I will be doing my very best to invite Brian Koziel. He is the host of Tee to Green on WGR 550 every Saturday from 7 to 8. And also he is he does the pregame, postgame, intermission. He's the host for the Buffalo Sabres on the radio on WGR 550. And also my former teacher, sort of teacher. He was like he was like an advisor almost. Like I knew him, but I never had him as a teacher. I was in the morning announcements when I was in high school, and he happened to be one of the teachers in charge. So super excited for that. And I might be doing a podcast soon about just going through all 32 NFL teams, and I'll do it with the NHL, NBA, and maybe baseball. I'm not too sure on baseball. And I want to go through, for this specific team, what jersey do you want for this player? Like what in particular? It could be past, it could be present. I might do even both. what's a good past player, what's a good present player. If I can't find a good present player, then we'll do a past or whatever. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Depot's Den with Evan DePasquale, and we will see you next week. Thanks for listening.